Okay, now let's go to the groovy guy. He's been kind of quiet so far. And he is gonna, would you describe your worst customer experience while mystery shopping?
I was reviewing that, and what came to mind were several instances of my initial greeting just being so unfriendly. And I recall in my very first shop I did, it was in Houston. The salesperson came out, looked at me, and said, "Are you waiting for me?" No hello, no welcome.
Oh,
Yes. And by the way, these are always scheduled tours. We never just pop in.
Right.
So yes, I'm waiting for you. The rest of the tour, she acted as if she was annoyed that I was there. I was taking up her time. I didn't feel welcomed. I had this
Mhm.
impression that she just wanted to get me out of the way and get out of there. And there was absolutely no possibility of developing any sense of trust or rapport or even liking who that person was. That skews your entire opinion of the whole community. Suddenly, the community doesn't look as pretty as maybe it really does.
oh wow, yeah.
True.
And I think the emotions that you're generating with your prospect has so much to do with their who they're going to select.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, the worst experience was just that sense of not being welcomed, feeling as if I was annoyance. And by
Hmm.
the way, there was no follow up from that person after the tour either.
Interesting to hear that perspective because we are all humans, even though we're consultants, and that relationship and rapport building and trust building definitely sways the pretty perfect amenity filled building. And it's hard to shake that,
Yes,
even though you might love a building, if you don't have a connection, it does factor into your report.
absolutely.
That's a great point, Miss Mardi Gras and Groovy Guy. It works in the other direction as well, is that it can be an older building, a more dated building, and a friendly, welcoming, pleasant customer experience can make those things fade in the background and be replaced by just that genuine relationship. So I think that's the other flip side of that kind of aha moment, if you will. A bad relationship could taint a beautiful building, but a great
Mhm.
relationship can really augment a,
Yes.
dated building. So it's a very powerful one way or the other. It's either going to work for a community or against somebody. So we're always trying to help the community, work that for their favor, our client community.
Well, it's so important because a lot of times salespeople or the people in the building, the associates in the building, they have to work with what they've got. If it's a dated
Mm.
building or maybe a building without all of the amenities, they still have a job to do. They have to take care of residents and the families, and they have to sell. And so the easiest way to do that is to be a good person and act like you care and I tell clients all the time that, our shoppers are not just shoppers. They're people. They're people who are using their own personal stories a lot of times as the profile for that prospect. And so when they are ignored or felt to be a nuisance, it does hurt their feelings. They get upset about it. They get mad about it. And
Yeah.
it's frustrating. So
Yeah.
You
that's
know, Amy, on that point, um, I would always tell my salespeople, we're not realtors. You're not selling real estate. So the pool, the bar, all that's pretty stuff, that's nice and important, but you're selling an experience. You're selling to me, are you going to take care and can I trust you with my loved one?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you've got to create that relationship. That's so important.
Well, that actually leads us right to the next question. And if you have anything to add to what you just said, what do you wish every community knew?
For me, discovery is such a critical piece. And I have had shops where there's been absolutely zero discovery at all. And I would want communities to know that discovery is much more than just showing somebody a rate sheet, the square footage, and telling me about your amenities. Discovery is actually building a relationship, like Constanella was talking about. You're building trust and rapport. And that's what I'm actually buying. I'm not buying real estate, I'm buying an experience. I'm buying a safe place for my loved one. And you have every opportunity to create that experience in the discovery process. So I would tell communities do that effectively. Maybe that's what is going to steer a move in into your community. As you just said, Amy, it may not be the prettiest building in the market, but shoppers aren't always looking for the prettiest building. They truly need to know my
Right.
loved one's going to be safe. They're going to have a
Right.
good experience. They're going to have an enjoyable experience. So make discovery your opportunity to build trust, rapport, and build that relationship. That typically is what gets the move in, probably more so than the pretty pool
Right.
and the happy hour and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, and discovery impacts every aspect of the sales process. You can't execute on many steps of the sales process without discovery. So that's a great point. Lula, do you have anything that you would like to add to that? What do you wish every community knew?
Well, it's interesting listening to everybody because the one component that I think is really important is the dining program, and that hasn't been discussed by anybody. But
Mhm.
that is the one place where you have a touch point with a resident usually at least 3 times a day. It's one of probably the most biggest investments that a community makes in a community, and it's one of the most important things to health and wellness. But I go to so many communities where it just feels like an afterthought. Just simple things like garnishing a plate instead of just having a brown plate of food, sourcing from local areas, having an herb garden in the back. There's just hundreds of ways that it could be well done, and it's just disappointing a lot of times that it's not. The other thing that I'm noticing is wind down Wednesdays and happy hours are so important to being with the other residents and people getting together. But alcohol can trigger a big fall issue. So there's a new category that's alcohol removed wines that's become really important since COVID. And I actually saw a community that was using this in the last couple days, but I think that's something that's going to be really important in 2024 and moving forward, and it'll be a great resource for communities to find out about.
And I think that using that, presenting that effectively during the sales process, those things will help you, stand apart from your competitor. And it's amazing how sometimes dining is just kind of, yeah, here's our dining room. They're not really using it as a tool to gain new residents. It's a great
Especially
point.
especially like with words, instead of calling it a hamburger patty, call it a sirloin or something. And,
Mhm.
chicken
Mhm.
a la king instead of chicken stew, instead of red and white wine, call it a Chardonnay and a Burgundy. It's
Mhm.
just little things like that can elevate a dining program and how people view your community, but it just takes a little thought.
Mhm.
If
Yeah,
I
I
could
agree.
add something, Lula, I appreciate you mentioning the non-alcoholic wine. I spent a couple years as a sales director for drug treatment centers, and it made me become aware of that whole issue. About 10% of our population has an addiction issue. So sometimes when you are touring individuals, mom or dad might be a recovering alcoholic. So I would
Mhm.
caution salespeople to not get too excited about happy hour and the bar, because you may be talking to an adult child of an alcoholic, and what you're saying is actually is counter effective to what you're trying to do.
Yep.
Especially if they
Yeah.
grew up with mom or dad who had severe alcoholism and now you're focused on happy
Yeah.
hour, you're not
Right.
doing yourself a favor.
Right. That's a
No, that's
great point.
great point too. And it does go right back to the point about how important discovery is. The more you learn about somebody and ask questions about someone, then you would probably tend to not accidentally kind of steer into that potential pain point.
Right.
That happened to me at a community when I was visiting in upstate New York. And the community had a little ice cream parlor, which is cute as can be. And the salesperson just kept going on and on and on about how it's unlimited ice cream. There's an ice cream social every afternoon. So it was like ice cream on top of ice cream. Well, I cannot eat dairy. So for me, every time she mentioned ice cream, it made me mad. that I was like, I'd love to have ice cream, but to your point, like not everybody, can enjoy these things. So to add more discovery, then the presentation could be a little bit more customized and tailored, and then that's when the value gets created, right? So very interesting topic to bring up. Thank you for that.
Libby, I always say to salespeople, don't talk about what you think is valuable. What you might think is valuable in the community has absolutely no value to the prospect that you're touring, and that's why discovery is so important.
Yeah. True. Very true.
But doesn't it just get back to the point of discovery and so forth to say, if somebody asks a question like, do you have pets at your community, and you jump into, oh yes, we're very pet friendly and there's 42 dogs that live here and you hate dogs, then you've just blown it. Instead, you might come back with, well, help me understand why you asked that question in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've talked a lot about what communities can do so far. I'd like to ask to bring this back to Lula again and ask you, what do you wish that operators or investors, developers would do more of in 2024 to support the community team?
It's really simple. Just be kind. And I think if they showed more appreciation to their team members and supported the team members, they could have a completely different experience. I mean, especially with COVID, COVID in, COVID out, mask on, mask off. There's just a lot going on in the world. And sometimes I just think a call just saying thank you for everything you do, or we know you've had a really busy week, let me buy you dinner. I think that would add to the emotional experience and the investment that people put into the community. I'm much more willing to work for somebody that I know appreciates me than somebody that's just calling every day for numbers. So I think the more we tie into this should be an experience, and it should be, an emotional tie like we've talked about with the residents. I think that's going to become more and more important, and more of what's going to help people make a decision on where they want to live.
That's really that was an unexpected answer, but I think a really good answer.
Yeah.
And having been in that role where you're managing communities and you're being, freaking out at the end of the month and all of that, and what have you done for me lately mentality, just I'll say it doesn't work, and I probably have people out there saying, but you did that. But as most of our consultants, they learn after mystery shopping, you learn what should be done versus what maybe you have always done. And making that connection with your team and helping them see value in the act of discovery, and helping them, be trained well for their job and have the tools that they need, and all those things, are so important. I really like that answer.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.